Cogliandro Beyens, and you are listening to the special Encard podcast series registered at the occasion of the 2022 edition of the Encard Academy. The goal of this podcast series is to learn how to become a change maker for a sustainable future. In this podcast series, you will listen to European leaders working in the broad field of culture. They will present you their work, their experience, their solutions to the current challenges and how they have used their digital, managerial and green skills in an innovative way, and thus to ensure a greener future. In this podcast, I have the pleasure to welcome Julie Fassbender and Joanna Strombek.
Hello, my name is Julie Fassbender. I work at Schaal, the Conservation Institute here in Maastricht, the Netherlands. I'm here since 2017. I'm originally from Düsseldorf in Germany, and I work as PR and communication and management assistant at the Conservation Studio. I did a bachelor in art history in Düsseldorf, and I graduated from the Master's Arts and Heritage in 2020 here at Maastricht University. And my specialization is the artist estates. And I'm currently also organizing public events at Schaal and helping the educational team to organize events and lectures as well.
My name is Joanna Strombek. I'm painting conservator at the Schaal in Maastricht. I was trained in Poland in Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts in painting conservation treatments, and my training was complemented by the internship at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. I was working for the Museum Wilanów Palace in Warsaw. And after a period of treating paintings there, I joined Schaal team in 2019, where I continued to specialize in structural paintings conservation. Here at the Schaal, we have one particular method for structural treatments that originated from Maastricht, was invented, developed by one of our conservators, and I'm currently practicing the method in the studio and also going for workshops in country and abroad to make it more recognized. This is a method that we consider very sustainable and also very respectful for the paintings. So I'm thrilled to say a little bit more about the method and about our Schaal contributions to being sustainable.
We were invited to participate at the program from NCACT here in Maastricht. We presented our conservation studio in a visit to all the participants, and we showed them what we do and showed them our studio. We had a talk about sustainability and conservation, and we exchanged together with all the participants about ideas and concepts of sustainability in the cultural field. This is important to us, to Schaal, because we try to implement, or at least to think about better and more sustainable choices within conservation. So Schaal is short for Stichting Restauratie Atelier Limburg. It's Dutch, and it's a conservation studio in the southern part of the Netherlands, in Maastricht. It was founded in 1987, and we are a team of about 15 conservators, and we're specialized in various restoration disciplines. So we do have paintings conservators, also historic interiors, modern and contemporary art conservators, and sculptures and panels as well. So we are an international and interdisciplinary team, And we do consultancy as well as research and treatments. And one of our services is as well education. So we also give workshops for professionals and for students that we organize in person and online as well. We work closely with different institutions within the Netherlands, with the Ministry of Culture, the RCE, as well as with universities like the University of Amsterdam and Maastricht University. And our conservators are also part of different networks, international networks that do research and education and conservation. So it's our studio, I would say, is quite unique within the Netherlands because it's, as I said, an interdisciplinary studio with a lot of different disciplines and a big team. And we do treatments of big projects for museums, for cities, for different institutions. But we also do treatments for private collectors and for other private institutions. So one strength of SRAL is the interdisciplinary team. That means that we have experts in different fields, and their expertise can be combined for big projects where we need research and treatments and where different approaches are needed as well. So this is, I think, one of the big strengths of our institution, that we have different expertise and different approaches and views on conservation, and that we can easily combine those within our studio so that we can take on different projects that need different approaches. We've been invited by NCAT for the academy. We have already relationships with NCAT and the members for a long time. And we have been invited this year to talk about sustainability. The program was in Maastricht, and as one cultural institution within the city that is dealing with sustainability, we were invited. The academy for us is important because it also creates the chance of exchanging with participants from other countries. And this is something that is really important for us as well, to connect with other art professionals and other professionals in the field to exchange ideas about sustainability and to talk about new approaches and about new ideas. We have been invited to share our knowledge and our methods about sustainability, and we like to get involved more deeply into this topic.
At the Strahl in Maastricht, we tend to be very thoughtful about the methods that we choose for conservation of paintings. And we now think a lot about the term of sustainability that is became to be quite popular subject and quite present in medias and conversations. And we give a lot of considerations and thoughts to what does it actually mean, because if you ask a question what sustainability is, it's a little bit tricky to give a strict answer with one sentence. What is it? So we also have a lot of discussion here for understanding what is it, and finding some definitions of it, or rather our possible response to the needs of our world. We have quite a nice relationship with the sustainability and conservation, and Kathleen Sofalik, who I believe was also one of the speakers for the event. And she sometimes comes to Strahl also for the workshops that she gives to the UVA students that are being trained at the Strahl for the practical last year of their program. We had quite a lot of discussions with her, and I believe quite often she starts with a claim, with a statement that if we want to preserve our heritage, then we need to think about saving the world. Because what's the point in saving heritage without saving the world? And I think those are very, very important words of hers, And that resonates with us a lot. And therefore, it's such a wide subject that it affects our practice as conservators, but it also affects us being human beings and how we just do things in our daily life. So at Struggle, we also see this a duality of the subject, and we try to think about it both ways. So one of the aspects is just simple things: turning off the kettle, unplugging it for when we are not using it, turning off, shutting down computers when we leave the studio and we don't use them in the office anymore. Those small, simple things, not wasting water when we wash our dishes. But there is also conservation part to it, and that's also a big subject for us professionals. During the visit of the group in our studios on Friday, we had the pleasure to show everyone around and talk a little bit about conservation also. What is it actually, conservation of paintings and artworks? And in our daily practice, we encounter quite a lot of solvents. We are trying to preserve the heritage, but we are also restricted by the code of ethics. So as conservators, we really like to call ourselves doctors for paintings. And that means that for each single patient that comes to our studio, we are trying to select a method and materials, all the program for the treatment accordingly to its needs. So a simple example of that, if, for example, for me, I will need a lot of vitamin A because I didn't eat enough vegetables with that one, doesn't mean necessarily that for my colleague Julie, it's a good scenario because maybe she needs much more vitamin C. And this is also what we choose with what kind of choices we have to make with our conservation treatments, simplifying it. And what I mean by that is that we are also restricted by the code of ethics, also as doctors. So, first rule is don't cause any harm, of course. And the thing is that we are already restricted by many rules. We have to be very respectful for the artwork. We have to make sure that we are helping. And we also have to make sure that all our methods are reversible, are quite durable, are efficient, are going to help the artwork. Also, we talk about it, they should not pollute the air, they should not cause eventually climate change. So there are so many factors to think about, and always the priority is to make sure that the painting will be better after the treatment. So what we talked was also about how many challenges nowadays the world gives us, and how also fascinating it is to try to deal with them. And with our methods, it's not only about the mislining, but that's actually the method that I wanted to mention. Mislining is a method of reinforcing the canvas paintings with addition of secondary canvas. This is a practice called lining, and lining has a very long history in conservation of paintings. And there are many methods of applying this secondary canvas. It was used for hundreds of years, just with different adhesives, depending on different climate. Italy had very different methods than the Netherlands, and then there were variations of those methods depending on single studio even. So here at Straal, we had senior conservator Jos van Och, who developed a method that his main idea of upgrading that system was to limit amount of solvents, limit amount of adhesive that is used for it, limit amount of water that is used for it, also limit amount of pressure that is applied to the painting, and warmth. Those factors are always a problem, and I don't want to get into too much details because I know I'm getting quite specific here. But what I'm thinking about the mentioning it about how that impacts the environment, well, it does, because we are not wasting exceed amount of water with that method. We are choosing consciously solvents that we are using for this method for reactivation. So we use very small amount, and we only use vapors. So you can imagine how little of liquid solvent we have to use if we are only using vapors as an active factor in the process. It's a very small amount, and we are limiting amount of heat and pressure, which is very often used in different techniques of lining paintings. And that also means that we use way less energy for that. And that's also an aspect that in different techniques, it requires very specific equipment that is large. Those are huge tables that are getting warmed up. They get the whole suction system, which means that it's a lot of energy and a lot of power needed to even turn them on, and they need to be on for some certain amount of time. The engine that we are using for our low pressure is the engine of, it can be actually an engine of our vacuum cleaner, house vacuum cleaner. So it's a very small amount of energy that needs to be used. With solvents, it's also something that it needs to be considered, and it's a big subject in conservation treatments because we also want to avoid solvents that are unhealthy for us conservators, but we are at the same time obliged to make sure that the solvent will be efficient, removing non-original materials from the surface, but at the same time that will not affect the original. So there are, very roughly speaking, there are different groups of solvents that are used in conservation, and you can think of alcohols or ketones and aromatic solvents also. And if you think about aromatic solvents, that will be something a little bit similar to gasoline that you take for your car. So you know that that's not something you want to touch or drink. The example for that could be, for example, your nail polish remover. So you know that you do touch your nails and your skin with it and you don't die from it, but at the same time you don't want to, I don't know, take a bath in it. With alcohols, we also realize that this is something that we even do drink. So this very simplified human brain logistics can also help a little bit with having that guideline, what is maybe better or worse to use in terms of how we are affecting also the environment. And with our mislining method, we tend to use alcohols whenever it is possible and safe for the painting. And while for different other methods, sometimes very severe, very dangerous actually solvents may need to be used, especially from the aromatic groups that are definitely not friendly for our birds, plants, and our own health. So there are some aspects to the mislining, specifically mislining technique, that can be considered very sustainable. I think our biggest challenge is that we still use acrylic adhesive, which is microplastic, and we are also trying to be very aware of this and how we clean our equipment after using it to make sure that we are not pulling all the acrylics through our drains that will also go to the eventually to pollute the ground, the soil. So what we do, we have a system of drying the solids out of water when we clean our equipment, and then we just basically recycle whatever is possible from the leftovers. So there are many aspects, not necessarily only in mislining, but also in other aspects of our daily work and materials that we use. And it's all about acknowledging the problem and applying that scheme of thinking through how to do and what not to do to our daily life, and not necessarily only in the office or in the lab or in our studio, but also even when we are leaving our studio and going back home, and preserving this world for our artworks, so the artworks can also have place to be preserved for. Sustainability became a big subject over the last, I would say, 2 years, I think. From what I noticed, I'm working as paintings conservator, but I'm also assistant coordinator for the ICOM CC group. That's a conservation group. I'm there specifically in the working group paintings. But I noticed that even for the ICOM, for example, the main subject, the main theme of the next conference will be sustainability. And I see that also there is another IIC Association for Conservators that is international, and their last publication, News in Conservation, was fully dedicated to sustainability. That's also where our team at Straw, including myself, had an opportunity to publish on our mislining method as a sustainable in conservation. And I think that there is a lot of discussion in that field about how to make things more sustainable, what sustainability means. And it's a very important subject. And a lot of institutions are realizing that and coming to realization of that and finding methods. And that brings us all together. And also the larger institutions are seeing it as an important point of discussion right now. And that's great, because that makes it even wider and spreading a little bit faster with more hands on to figure out what we can do and how can we proceed with making a difference eventually.
What I'm noticing is that institutions are trying to find a way to include this sustainable change or the sustainable practices within their policies. And I think this is really important for a change, that it is really part of a company's policy to care not only for the artworks, but also for the environment. And I think in that way, there can be concrete changes that will help make this change. So something that I noticed and that I think is a really good initiative is to collect feedback from professionals and practitioners within the cultural field about their needs and their wishes to make a more sustainable working space or practices. And I think if you collect this feedback, then you can establish hopefully some guidelines that will help create a more sustainable cultural field. And I think this was something I thought was really interesting about the talk we had with the participants from NCAT.
It was also very striking how international that problem is. And with seeing all the participants, I could realize that in each part of our world, we are struggling and facing the same problems, and we all want to solve them. So that's also quite impressive, and also very helpful to see that if we put our thoughts together, then we can go much farther and much faster with those different perspectives just by coming together. The meeting on Friday that showed me that there are very different professions also involved, even within the cultural heritage sector. There are so different professions, so different thoughts, and so different needs and ideas and all solutions that put together they can make so much. They can make a difference. And I think that coming together in this international surrounding that can really help, because that puts so many different perspectives together. And I think that gathering and working out through the problems with a group of people is always so much more efficient than with one head on solving the world problems. Let's hope that the next time we meet each other together, there will be a little bit more structure in how to be sustainable in our daily practice, and which methods and what are the guidelines for keeping our daily practice sustainable and to preserve our world.
For more information about the mislining method, there is an article published in the IIC News and Conservation issue number 89 from May 2022. And this article was written by our conservators Kate Seymour, Joanna Strombek, my colleague, and Rachel Schilders. It's an article about mislining greener solutions to the structural reinforcement of canvas paintings, and it's available online. It is free of charge and can be consulted and downloaded. And we would like to share this link with all the participants that are interested.